Hi, I'm Al, and today Ben and I are going to be taking a look at our top 10 favorite feats currently available in Dungeons & Dragons.
Though a variant rule, feats are something that you will find at almost every table in Dungeons & Dragons. They add such a cool and new way to add flavor to an existing character outside of the normal class progression. Maybe it's just the power gamer in me, but I can't think of a single character I've played where I haven't ended up taking a feat at one point or another. So me and Al wanted to cover our favorite feats that either add a whole level of power to our characters or just enable cool, new, and interesting ways to play your character.
First up, at number 10, we have the Ritual Caster feat. Now, I think Ritual Caster has a lot to add to the value of your character's utility, as well as their story as a character, and I think it's often overlooked in favor of Magic Initiate. But I think that the Ritual Caster really holds its own at the table. While Magic Initiate gives you one first level spell and a couple of cantrips, Ritual Caster gives you multiple first level ritual spells from a spell list of your choice. But where I think it really shines is that later on in your adventure, you can add more ritual spells to your spell book. Now this is great because you get one of the wizard's best features, the ability to ritual cast. And if you pick the wizard's spell book to take your ritual spells from, then you have access to all of those juicy spells like Identify, Find Familiar, Detect Magic, all those great ritual spells that are known to be on the wizard's repertoire. Now this is why Ritual Caster is so low on our favorites list, because if you do have a wizard or even a bard in the party that has access to some of these juicy ritual spells, then I think it loses a little bit of its utility in your party.
Number 9 on our list is Prodigy. I like this one a lot because of its applications with all sorts of different kinds of builds. You get proficiency in a skill, a tool, fluency in a language, and expertise in a skill of your choice. When this feat first came out, the only ways you could get expertise were with rogues and bards, so already this opened up all sorts of opportunities for new character ideas. I most often end up taking this feat on a variant human as the first level feat just to really make sure, especially in those low levels, that I'm really good at whatever skill I'm trying to be good at. If I am a deft investigator or a daring athlete, then I should be really good at those skills, and Prodigy helps me live out that fantasy. I also like this feat because not only is it good on classes that don't get expertise, but will also be helpful on classes that do. Prodigy is a feat that I use extensively on grapple builds, as it really helps ensure, especially as I get to 5th or 9th level, that my grapples are going to land. That being said, while granting more flexibility, it does rank fairly low on our list as it doesn't necessarily bring a lot of power to the table.
Next up at number 8, we have Chef. Chef is one of our all-time favorite feats here at Short Rest, and not only because of its mechanical value, but because it adds a whole nother level of flavor to your character, and adds an element to your backstory that is really awesome, and that we really like to see in feats. So what does Chef give you? First, it gives you proficiency in cook's utensils. Also, when you are finishing a long rest, you can prepare a meal for your buddies and regain hit points if they spend their hit die, which is a sizable D8. And when you finish a long rest, you can prepare a number of treats to pass out to your fellow adventurers and give them temporary hit points. I think this feat is a slam dunk. It really adds all the things that I like to see in a feat, which is a little bit of mechanical power so you don't feel bad for taking it, but it also adds another story element to your character, and it's just a really fun, wholesome feat.
Our number 7 pick is Magic Initiate. This is another incredibly flexible feat that I have used to shore up builds that I have made in one way or another. Either I need to get Hex on my monk, or I just need to get some way to get Booming Blade. While the leveled spell you can cast with this doesn't scale at all, I found this feat really helpful for getting cantrips that I'm after, and there are plenty of first level spells that don't scale that are useful at all levels. I know I have definitely used Magic Initiative to pick up Shield more than once. And while Ritual Caster is a very good way to pick up Find Familiar is also useful here if you're also trying to get those blade cantrips. If you pick up an owl with Flyby, you are able to give yourself help and advantage on those attacks without worrying about your familiar getting into trouble.
Next up, at number 6, we have Polearm Master. I'm really glad that this feat exists because I don't see a lot of polearms in D&D, but every time I've run up with a character who wants to wield a halberd or a glaive, I have always picked up this feat and I've never regretted it. It really gives you a lot of value for what it is. One of the things that sucks most about wielding a polearm is you don't get an extra number of attacks because you're dual wielding, or you don't get the extra protection from a shield. So getting extra benefits outside of the larger damage die is exactly what I want as a polearm wielding adventurer. And when you take this feat, you can make a attack with the other end of your glaive, albeit slightly lower damage die, only a d4. But where I think this feat really shines is you get an extra situation where you can take an opportunity attack. Now, instead of only when an enemy leaves your threatened space, it's also when an enemy enters your threatened space. And since you are wielding a polearm, unless it is a quarterstaff, you have a very large threatened area. So as soon as an enemy runs up on you, you can make a counterattack before they even have the chance to hit you. If you have the feats to spare, this feat is bonkers good with the feat Sentinel, which is an amazing feat by itself, but when coupled with Polearm Master, you're able to make an opportunity attack on an enemy that is 10 feet away from you and stop their movement, so if they have a 5-foot reach weapon, they can't even get to you, which is really powerful. And while Sentinel is arguably better and more applicable to more builds, I do really enjoy that Polearm Master is supportive of one of my favorite fighting styles, which is the halberd and glaive.
At number 5, we have Metamagic Adept. I could really see any of the class Adept feats being here, but Metamagic is just personally my favorite. Metamagic is an incredibly useful way to get more value out of the spells you're casting. So being able to have it as part of a feat allows other classes to get some of that value as well. I also like that while this is very useful on full casters like wizards and druids, and even useful for the sorcerer to take for a couple more options and sorcery points, I also think this feat is really useful for classes like the Warlock, or half-casters, or even third-casters. With metamagic options like twin casting or quickened casting, we can see these casters who don't have as many spell slots as the rest of the casters in the game getting more value out of the spells they are casting. Whether that's through action economy or just casting more spell per spell slot. Though I can without a doubt say that the most fun I have had with this feat is on a sorcerer, as the extra 2 points and flexibility of metamagic options really goes a long way for the class.
Next up at number 4 is another feat from Tasha's, Fey Touched. Fey Touched offers you a lot for what it is. First off, it is a half feat, so you get to round out one of your mental ability scores by adding 1 to it, and you also get a bit of spell casting. With Fey Touched, you can cast Misty Step, which is a 2nd level spell, or a 1st level spell from the Enchantment or Divination schools of magic once per long rest. You select which spell it is when you select this feat. Well, first off, Misty Step is a really awesome spell to have on hand. Some of my favorite moments in Dungeons & Dragons is when I cast Misty Step, or one of my players casts Dimension Door in a pinch, and they can really help in those life or death moments. Additionally, the Enchantment and Divination schools of magic may seem like a flop at first, but when you dig further, you find that there are actually a lot of really amazing spells to choose from. For example, you could pick Charm Person, Bless, Bane, Hex, or Hunter's Mark, or even Gift of Alacrity. There are tons and tons of spells that you can choose from that can really round you out as a character. Whether you are a martial class and you just want a little bit of that spellcasting, or you're a spellcaster who wants to round out your spells or have one ready on tap all the time, Fey Touched is really great. Additionally, Shadow Touched, which is very similar. It is a half ability score, but it gives you invisibility instead of Misty Step, and you have to pick your spell from the Illusion or Necromancy schools. I think both of them are really awesome feats, but I really like what Fey Touched offers a little bit more.
Now, getting into the top 3, we have Warcaster, giving you advantage on concentration checks, allowing you to cast spells as an opportunity attack. There's really a lot to like about Warcaster, and it makes you a very formidable foe as a spellcaster on the battlefield. Not only does it help ensure that once you cast your spells, they stick, but also that if you are surprised and someone gets up into your threatened area, that you are able to counteract with a spell of your own. Warcaster works best if you have one of the blade cantrips, Booming Blade, Green Flame Blade, or if you have something that can shut down your opponent, if your DM allows you to use Bigsby's Hand, or perhaps if you're a warlock and you have invocations that let you push away your foe with your Eldritch Blast. If you're in the late game and you have feats to spare, this is also something that synergizes very well with Polearm Master and Sentinel. None of these feats are exclusionary of each other, so for example, if you are holding a glaive and somebody comes within 10 feet of you, you can use your opportunity attack to cast a spell as long as it targets that opponent. And furthermore, if you have Sentinel and you hit them with that spell, their speed becomes 0. This becomes especially effective with spells that are able to move opponents around or push them away, though the feat investment is expensive.
Next up at number 2 is my all-time favorite feat, and that is Mobile. Mobile adds so much power to a character. While it is a little lacking on the flavor standpoint, just being speedy, quick, being all it offers, it does add a lot of mechanical fun to a character. Particularly if you are a rogue, Mobile will do work. Not only do you get an extra 10 feet of movement whenever you take the dash action, which includes when you use it as a bonus action with your cunning action, you can ignore difficult terrain. And the best part of this feat, when you make a melee attack against a creature, whether it hits or miss, you no longer provoke opportunity attacks when you leave that creature's threatened range. Every line of text on this feat is really powerful and synergizes really well with itself. Even though rogues who are dual wielding are going to get the most out of this feat, you don't have to be one to get value from it. Not only do monks really want it, but also Gish characters who have access to Expeditious Retreat can really get a lot of value out of it. Being able to zoom around the battlefield and not provoke opportunity attacks can be a really boon to your tactical positioning. Not only can you set yourself and your allies up for flanking, but if you need to get out of the battlefield to help your allies or run away from danger, then you are totally able to do so with this feat. It is really awesome, and rogues are great with this feat.
And then our number 1 feat is Sharpshooter. This one was a really close toss-up with Great Weapon Master, as one, the features are very similar, and they both have pretty equal power levels. But Sharpshooter ultimately won out due to the ways you can synergize with it to get the most value out of Sharpshooter. One, if you are any class that gets the archery fighting style, you are already going to mitigate that -5 to attack that you would usually take. Taking a -3 effectively for a +10 damage is, I think, a trade-off almost anyone can take. And the other 2 parts of Sharpshooter are pretty good at self-enabling themselves. As a ranged character, you are going to be looking for cover and things to hide behind when you are not shooting your bow. And so in looking for cover, you 1, remind your DM that cover exists, and 2, ensure that you will see the second half of this ability where you ignore most cover. And then being able to attack in your second range increment without disadvantage is also really, really good, making it really difficult in an open arena for other creatures to target you. Like I said, Great Weapon Master is really, really close in the running here, but I think there is a lot of value in being able to attack your opponent from a far away distance, or be in situations where you can target your foe, but your foe cannot target you. As with a lot of feats in the game, this is even better on a rogue character who can use aim as a bonus action and just give themselves advantage, making sure this is even more likely to hit.
So those are our top 10 favorite feats, whether it be for the power of them or the flavor of them. We find ourselves coming back to these 10 feats all the time. If you have a feat that you really enjoy in Dungeons & Dragons, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And if you got this far in the video, I just wanted to say a huge thank you. It really does a lot to help the channel. If you're looking for another free way to help us out, you could consider liking this or subscribing if you really enjoy our content. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you on your next short rest.
I also want to give a huge shout out to our patrons on Patreon. I can't tell you how much your support means to us. Our patrons of local hero tier and above for this month are Painted Sky and Robert Allen Klaus III. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on your next short rest.